The following presentation is part of the Beyond the Blast Doors network. You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
This is Pete Fletzer. On this episode, we're talking to writer, actor, and animator Teddy Newton. Join us as we talk about the art of storytelling, why some stories succeed, and trying to get fired from Disney. So strap yourselves in, relax, and enjoy this journey around the galaxy.
Player working.
I think we're having roast.
That's why we're here.
That's what's good.
I'm in New Orleans, where
it's an hour and a half. An hour and a half.
Hey, you know,
Teddy, I've known you for a bunch of years, but I'm not sure that everybody who watches my show might know who you are. So give us maybe a quick intro to Teddy Newton.
Okay, well, I am an animator. I've been doing this for about 25 years. I worked with Brad Bird on all of his movies, including The Iron Giant, The Incredibles, Incredibles 2, Ratatouille, and all of the live-action movies like Mission Impossible. If you have watched those movies, I'm often the mission voice that gives Tom Cruise the missions.
Oh, really? I see. Yeah. I know you, and I haven't picked up on that. It's amazing. Oh, wow, that's cool.
But mainly I do a lot of animation, and I'm designing for those movies. Incredibles in particular, designing the characters, or often the title sequences of those movies, like a lot of the animated titles. And I even ended up making my own film over there at Pixar called Day and Night.
Yes.
Which went with the Toy Story 3.
That's excellent. Now, you've done voices and design for Toy Story and Incredibles and those as well. And
yeah, I think a lot of times with animation, people who are pitching ideas are often used as the scratch track to those movies. And so at Pixar in particular, there's about 20 people that are just employees of the company that often are used as like a Pixar troupe. And we will usually do all the voices for those films. And sometimes, most of the time, they'll keep them, especially if it's an incidental character or a one-off character.
Right. So yeah, like you're the telephone in Toy Story. You're the
right.
You're the one. Which voices are you in Incredibles?
Incredibles, I'm the news guy who's like, in a stunning turn of events, Mr. Incredible is being sued for saving someone who didn't want to be saved. So that guy.
Yes. Yeah. And you did what has actually become one of my favorite sections of one of my favorite. Actually, it's really fun because my son, who has never met you, obviously, because we haven't seen each other in person in over 10 years, but he loves Iron Giant, and you played a gigantic role in that. In fact, there's that video where Brad Bird calls you the X Factor, which is on YouTube, and you pitched that little storyboard, which is you had mentioned before about how a storyboard sometimes they kind of let you go off in your own direction, even though it never shows up in the film. But talk about that.
Well, yeah. A lot of times with animation, unlike maybe it's different now. I think it's changing. But back in those days, you usually didn't have a full script. You usually had more or less a treatment, which I still think is the best way to make one of these movies. And in Brad's case, there would be a drawing for every scene. So you may have about 30 or so key drawings that would tell you where you are in the movie. So as an artist, you want to develop any one of those scenes. And he was pretty much allowing me to kind of pick which ones I'd like to work on. And sometimes I'd pick one and develop it and maybe go too far with an idea, like Hogarth and Kent hang out. That's the scene, like what he's trying to get information from the kid. So I did one where I had Kent take Hogarth to a strip club and he gets him kind of dressed up like a longshoreman and they go in and they're just, and then it turns out that Hogarth's mom also works there, but but of course that wasn't used.
No, I don't recall that part of Iron Giant.
No, it wasn't in the movie. But I do think, at least in my mind, when I was working on any of these projects with him, I would try broad ideas, mainly to shake him up from anything that may seem like a cliche.
Right.
And it often got him thinking of his own scenes, even in different ways that then take the scene elsewhere, just by doing that.
Right.
And so in a way, that kind of work, it's more like being a muse.
Right. Right.
Just to try to jog someone's or other people's imaginations.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because, if I try to pull this back to Star Wars, which I could just talk to you about anything, but I'm not sure that all my fans are all in that spot. But I think if you're a Star Wars fan, you're generally a movie fan. How do you feel about things like the fact that there's so much previs? So, for example, I don't know if you've watched. Have you watched the Mandalorian television show?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, and the gallery, which has talked about some of the behind the scenes stuff, and every single shot has been so planned so far in advance. What do you think that does to a movie? And do you think it's beneficial, or do you think it kind of impacts the creative process?
I know. I think in the very earliest stage, when you're coming up with the movie, I think that's a place where your gut reaction is key.
Mm-hmm.
Your instincts, just that intangible understanding of how ideas show up.
Right.
But I do think once you start making a movie, animation in particular, I think that's when the phase space starts to narrow in, and you probably, because you have a clock running, you do want some kind of a clear plan of what you're getting into that day.
Right.
I don't think that's for all films. But I think with things like that have a lot of special effects, I think that's probably a good idea.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe you could get around it. I'm a big fan of the Robert Altman movies as well, which I think it's banking on something else, some alchemy that's going to happen in performers. And sometimes his movies don't work if the combination's wrong.
Yeah.
But when it does work, it's something it's you can't recreate it with anybody. It's only going to be that perfect little thing that one time. And I think in those cases that would work. But in Mandalorian, they're all kind of wearing masks. So I don't know if you're going to get that nuance of actor on actor.
Right. You do have to kind of play in that. So you, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because you grew up a Star Wars fan, and I imagine it influenced you going into the creative side of filmmaking. Tell me a little bit about some of your earliest Star Wars memories and going to see it and
Yeah, I do remember it. I remember the color of the theater. It was blue. It was in Woodland Hills. I remember even egging my mom on, we got to go see this movie. She knew nothing about it. And I could remember right now sitting in the theater, certain scenes like the trash compactor or the Jawas, certain scenes are still as vivid that first time. And I always liked the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I never at that time thought I'd like to be making movies. I always thought I'd be a cartoonist, which I do draw all the time, but I wasn't until the second movie. They had an album that came out. It was called Sprocket Systems, that Ben Burtt, sound designer.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what this was from. Maybe the fan club had this, and he explains how he put these sounds together for the movie. Not just the Star Wars sounds, but he explains sort of his thinking of this. It's almost like these psychic needs that the movie is demanding. Like he was talking about robbers hopping in a car and escaping the scene.
Right.
And he's like, okay, what kind of car is it? And he would change the engine, not because it was accurate,
right,
but he was reflecting on, well, what kind of guys would rob a bank? And so he'd beef up the engine. And even if they were on dirt, he'd put tire squeals in there.
Right.
And it's not realistic, but it's matching the character of the moment. And just him talking about this, I feel like this kind of a discussion about a work of art is common now. I mean, you could get it on, YouTube channels, all these cinephiles and all the Blu-rays and all that stuff. But then it was like a unique thing. Yeah. Yeah. All right. All right. You want to come in here? You want to see? You always like to come in when I'm on a discussion here. This is Kitty. This is my daughter. This is Kitty.
Hi, Kitty.
Hi.
I know today's the last day of school.
Oh my goodness. Very exciting.
First grade.
Yeah, you're going to be in the first grade.
Oh my goodness. My son's last day of first grade is in 2 days. He's next week. So he's
Oh, really?
right now, yeah.
Mine's in 0.
0. Very good.
Cause tomorrow.
Oh yeah, tomorrow's no school. You going to be watching Mandalorian again?
No, I'm going to go to school.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Priorities.
Yeah. Okay, so
yeah. Excellent. So sound effects and the sound characterization. And you're right, there's so much additional information about how the films are made. So it sounds like you and I were in a similar spot in that we were kind of hungry to learn anything we could about how things were done.
yeah.
And any of those behind the scenes sort of shows were what really kind of drew me. As much as I loved the films, I loved how they made the films.
I know. I love that too. Well, it was fun. Hold on a minute. All right. All right. Go on inside. Go see Ace. I remember. I was thinking of when you have a person that you got interested in the medium by, and you get to meet them.
Yeah.
You want them to live up to what you had experienced as far as seeing them on TV.
Right.
Or read about. Well, with Ben Burtt, later when I was working at Pixar, he came in to do the film WALL-E as their sound designer. And, my wife was working really closely with Ben on that picture. And so I'd often come by, and I mean, he really did live up to everything. He was such a good teacher, and he showed you how he did all these sounds, and he had all the equipment right there just to show you and teach you, like how Darth Vader was done and all of those characters. But I haven't seen him in a long time, but he was really a great teacher, I thought.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I may have mentioned this to you at one point. My first interview for Star Wars Galaxy magazine was with Ben Burtt, and what I just found so amazing about him was I think he felt as excited to meet somebody who wanted to talk about his craft as we were, or as I was at that moment, to speak to him. And it's always great, and it kind of a relief when your heroes are live up to that expectation. Yeah,
I know. I then last time I saw him, I bumped into him at an airport. It was just before Force Awakens came out, and I didn't know if he had worked on it or not. And he said no. I think he started. Okay. And then they kind of kicked him off, and he was really irritated. It was becoming like the Wild West all of a sudden since they sold Lucasfilm.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, he is. Well, I mean, hey, you started with Disney, right? And and moved off. So
I know it's funny. You can never escape it, though. You leave Disney, you go work somewhere else, and then Disney buys it. Right. And then you're at Disney again.
Well, that must mean that you're going to the right places, because if Disney's willing to buy it, then there must be something positive in it.
Yeah.
So you've seen all the films, obviously, and one of the things I guess that's an interesting sort of connection for you and Star Wars is what I call sort of the success of a series, right? Because Incredibles is are they working on a new movie yet?
I know they would like to. Okay. I don't know if that's happening though.
But you have
I'm not.
Yeah, you have Toy Story 1 through 75, I think at this point, and the spin-off cartoons and that sort of thing. What is it as a story creator? Something like Star Wars, something like Toy Story, and doesn't seem like a natural connection, but they are two pop culture kind of series that now have stuck with people from a very important age in their life. What does it do you think about those sort of stories that has that kind of power?
I think if the characters resonate with people, that's what they really want to come see again and again. I always think of even a show like Lost as an actual series. I don't know if I could summarize or tell you an episode. I don't.
Right.
I watched it avidly.
Right.
I'm not really a binge watcher.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of control over that, but that was one I could not control. I did watch like 5 in a row, and it seems insane to me now to even believe that could happen.
To sit for 5 hours and watch.
I couldn't do it normally, but that one, the cliffhangers were so good.
Yeah.
But when I think of the ending, I know a lot of people complained about that ending, but I really came away loving that show mainly because of those characters, and I think that's the thing that hooks you. You love seeing them together,
right?
I think that's what's hard about Star Wars, with the original cast, and the big gaps between those movies is trying to keep you hooked, without making reference to those first movies or bringing someone from the original into it. It seems like it's such a long gap that it's not going to be quite the same. Yet there's this desire to have some element of the original film in these new ones.
So as somebody who's a fan of the films, how do you feel they did with the sequels? How do you feel they did make that connection? Do you think it was and the reason I ask, let me set this up for you real quick, because in the social media realm, the sort of Star Wars social media realm where I spend more time than I probably should, there's some real debate about what we did and didn't get. So as somebody who's probably, I'm imagining you haven't been involved in those conversations. How do you feel this? Yeah, because you're
although there is a thing at Pixar, there is a thing, there's a bowl that has money in it. And when we do those round tables of discussion about whatever we're currently working on, we'll reference anything. And if someone references Star Wars, they have to put a $20 bill in the bowl. Almost like seen as, stop it. Stop referencing that one movie.
Move on.
Yeah.
But so how do you, as a storyteller, as a designer and creator, you saw the sequels. How did you feel that made the connection? Did it live up to your expectation? Was there something you might have done differently, or?
Well, originally, I'll say this: when I saw Force Awakens, I thought it was really exciting. Mm-hmm. But I'd say it was exciting in that same way I think Star Tours was exciting. I don't know if I in the context of when it first came out, I was very excited because it was so. It was like you get this feeling of wow, I haven't been here in a while, and it feels tactile like the old movies.
Yep.
But I can't say I revisited the movie. Mm-hmm. Like the older ones, and I always found myself seeing the other ones over and over. I could watch them at even now, just kind of watch them.
Right.
But I don't seem to. I don't know what it is. I think a lot of movies nowadays, there's so much the technical ability of the craft of everything. The art, the acting, the editing, the music, all this stuff works really well at a high level, consistently. Not just Star Wars, but a lot of movies. But I find, even with that, I don't see that there's as much magic as I felt a lot of the films. I'm not saying they don't happen; they do happen, but they don't have the magic that I remember older films having.
Yeah, it's true. I was actually I just did an interview very recently with a guy who's a visual effects editor, and he's worked on everything from Marvel to Star Trek, Walking Dead, and he worked on Rise of Skywalker. And we were talking about how there's a certain people tend to go back to the originals as their Star Wars, right? And because I think the sequels feel like they live in this new Marvel type age of movies, right? Versus whatever that sort of organic outcome from the original films were.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Now,
you're right.
and I think maybe the last time I saw you was we might have gone to see like Attack of the Clones together or something in New York City.
No, it was the last one. It was
Revenge of the Sith. We saw it together. That's right. That's right.
I remember Dan Aykroyd was in the audience.
Yes. Yep. That's right. And
in the movie, he wasn't in the movie.
It wasn't in the movie. No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
But I remember. I think we were talking to Frank Oz at the bar or something like that. That was a pretty fun night. But how do you? So when you think about the three different, let me throw a concept out to you, and I want to get your feedback because I look at the three trilogies. So the original trilogy, George was it was an independent film essentially, right? And he was getting feedback from all these, at the time, emerging great filmmakers. The prequel series, George was so independent that he was like, I'm not going to listen to anybody, and made his films because he now had the technology. Then you have the sequel series, which to me is there's no way to say this without probably pissing a few people off, but they're corporate movies, right? I mean, Disney bought them, and they've gone through. Now Star Wars doesn't do test screenings and things like that, but they're built by a committee versus built by one person. Do you see that as sort of one of the reasons for the three different feels of the three different trilogies?
Yeah, they sure are. Yeah, that's true. They do feel like that. Well, I think everybody wants to recreate something that did really well. I think if anything, they're getting the feel. I think Mandalorian actually feels most like what I remember the original Star Wars movies feeling like, and I'm not sure if it's just the tone of it. It's not too funny,
right?
Sometimes it's got a little wit to it, but it's not being silly funny. Right. It's got a nice moodiness to it that I think was the closest thing to, like, I think of those Jawas in the first Star Wars.
Yeah,
you don't see scenes like that in movies. It's almost seen as boring.
Right.
But I think that was so compelling because it's got so much mystique around what's going on, and I feel like that's an element that I don't really see in a lot of the Star Wars movies is mystique. Mm-hmm. Which I think is partly its appeal. Yeah,
it's interesting too because I feel like because they tell stories differently. I mean, I remember watching Jaws recently and being struck by the fact that from a they follow Chief Brody for what feels like an hour, just like him walking down his steps down to the dock, and it's one camera shot, and now if you're on a shot for, is that what's sort of the magic number to how long should you be on a shot for? It's like it's a second or two, right? So the style of films, and I think that's where that magic is a little bit different. And
I think with something like that. Like, I know those kind of shots you're talking about. It's a wide shot, and it lets you in on that world. You see the world that Martha's Vineyard world during the summer, and it really goes pretty vast, and it feels very authentic to what it's really like over there. I've been to Nantucket. It's the same kind of a thing, but it's exactly like that. It feels just like that. And I feel that's such an important component too, is to immerse you in a place that feels like, oh yeah, it's very lived in. It doesn't feel like actors. You don't feel like there's some craft service right off camera. That's a really difficult thing to capture. I think that's another thing that sometimes with too much planning or too many effects, you won't get that feeling at all.
Right, because they're very set. They're like you said, they're working on the clock. You have to get in, get out. So have you watched any of or have you seen any of the behind the scenes of The Mandalorian that's on Disney Plus? You know what?
I walked in and out of that. I didn't see them front to back. My son watching it, but
I mean, they have that new technology called the Volume, which is that digital stage that they work on, which I think gives them a little, I watched that and I realized that the magic hour that certain sunlight area doesn't matter anymore, because now they can work in this digital environment that looks, makes you feel like you're actually in a desert and they flip a switch and now you're in a space hangar somewhere or whatever. And it frees people up quite a bit, but it also, I think that's why you get a different feel. It's funny how much, and I think that's one of the things that I take from having had conversations with you, is so much happens that you don't see on screen. Whereas now as movies they've always been a business, but now they're $1 billion business. And there's no room for mistakes. There's no room for letting something happen generally.
Yeah, I wonder, and this isn't all movies, but you're right. When they get kind of big, they do tend to do that a lot more. It's almost as if there's this need to wrap everything up very, cleanly.
Yeah.
No extra thoughts are allowed. We're the professionals. We're going to control all that. You don't have to think about any of this. We got it all under control.
Right.
But I do think my taste is when there's a little bit of mystery sort of left, and it could be anything. Could be like just having what is that thing? Why did that character mean by that? I feel like Ben Kenobi was one of those characters. A lot of these things aren't answered until the next film many years later.
Right.
But components like that, I think, are the hooks.
Yeah.
Of why you keep coming back, because you feel like you don't know the whole person yet or storyline.
Do you think it's the evolution of the audience now? Like, for example, like I said this a couple shows ago with somebody, I can't remember who it was, but we were talking about how in A New Hope or Star Wars, when we saw it, Obi-Wan and Luke are just like, oh, my father didn't fight in the Clone Wars, and they talked about the Clone Wars, and you had no idea what that meant. Whereas a film today would do like a 15-minute sort of flashback.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think there's a term for that. When you're watching or listening to a story, they call it like distant mountains. Something that you can see, but from only this vantage. You can't quite get there, but you know it's out there. And that's one of the things that makes the world credible. It feels like it's a bigger world than even the thing you're watching. It goes beyond the frames of that movie when you're describing some other events or something that possibly happened that predates the movie you're watching.
Right.
And I think, honestly, by the time they made the prequels, it sort of shrank that world.
Yeah.
Because prequels needed their own distant mountains inside of the story, not necessarily a vehicle to explain the movie's mysteries.
That's a great point. I think you're right. It's sort of, and I think that was part of the reason why the drama wasn't there, because we kind of knew what was going to happen. We knew at some point
you knew
Anakin was going to
happen.
turn. You knew Vader was going to come out. Yeah.
And I think it's okay to know that, like, as you're going in. But I think like a good example, like Titanic's a great example of this. I think those movies should have taken more from that cue, where you're going in with one intention. Oh my God, I've never seen it so realistic. It's actually going to sink, and we're going to be like firsthand witnesses to you want to see this.
Right.
Because there's something in you that's excited about watching some catastrophic thing happen like that up that close.
Right.
But because of the element of romance in the movie, that you're following the girl's story, you don't want it to happen once the iceberg hits. This other story has invested you so much that the thing you came to see is no longer the thing you're rooting to happen.
Yes.
You're rooting for something else now. And that's what I think. That's what they needed, a little more of that component in those other movies. He's going to turn into Darth Vader, but you need some other element that's going to keep your interest around him not wanting to become that thing.
Right. And it's one of those things where
I think they tried that, but I don't think that came off.
I don't think it was as successful. Yeah, I think what I always find very interesting is I remember reading an article in, I think it was Starlog magazine or something when I was a kid, where Lucas, while they were doing Return of the Jedi, there was like a picture of the sail barge, and he's like, you don't want to tell the story to show your scenery. And I feel like he was having too much fun with his toys in the prequels and didn't the story was there. I think if you kind of take it apart, there's an interesting story happening there, but it did have a little bit of trouble being delivered in that way. But what it did also do is it set up some other great sort of spin-off stories. I don't know. Do you have you watched any of the Clone Wars series or the Rebels series at all?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I can't add to that.
No, that's fine. But what's interesting is they've expanded the stories into that realm, and so you did get attached to the clones. And what's interesting is that, you know, the example I've given a lot lately is my son's entree to Star Wars was this Clone Wars animated series. And I took for granted that he knew that the clones turn bad and attack the Jedi, but he didn't know that. And he watched the series, and the last episode or the second to last episode of the series, they turn. And he was shocked because he loved the clones as he was. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm a bad parent. I don't know what I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. And so, do you think the sequels set up stories that got your attention? Do you feel like the
ones that have been currently?
Yeah, the last 3 films, saga films. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an answer because I've seen them all. I have seen them. I've seen them all, but I don't know what it is. I was not drawn to these as much as the more they made, the less I was drawn to it.
Yeah.
Maybe Rogue One was maybe the most successful one. Kind of an interesting idea, but I did think the actual sequels to Star Wars, Luke Skywalker's storyline, I can't say that I ever watched them again.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I've seen Rogue One a couple times, but I haven't seen those other ones for some reason. I didn't get into anything necessarily.
It's interesting you say that because I've actually also said the same thing about the Marvel films, where I love them. I thought they were fun. They were great movies, but I've never gone to see a Marvel movie more than once in the theater. And I don't know why. They're so much fun. They're gigantic experiences.
Well, I don't know what it is. It's like that thing about magic I was saying, and I don't know what it is because it's been a while where you see something that feels like a big movie.
Right.
And, you know, it's doing all the things it needs to do, and it satisfies.
Yep.
But you leave the theater and you're not really thinking much about it again.
Right.
The last movie that did that for me, where I went to the theater, where I was actually excited to go into the theater, I was excited to buy the popcorn, and the idea of thinking about it for hours was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was the last movie I got really into in that way. And it did possess this thing. Whatever it was just sort of the atmosphere, those characters, the surprises.
Yep.
Just the ideas in it seemed, even though it was paced in this slower way than I think most of those big movies that you were mentioning do.
Yeah.
It was doing something that kept you thinking about it, at least for me.
Yeah.
Later. Yeah.
You know,
Had a great sense of wish fulfillment too. I think that's a big part of a good movie. I think the original Star Wars, I mean, I don't know, you could say that that's a wish fulfillment. Anybody who's kind of living in a nowhere sort of situation, who has a little taste for adventure, actually gets it. That's a big deal. And I think it's as simple as that. Or in Quentin's movie, there's a psychopathic fantasy that is a wish fulfillment, especially if you know the real story of what happened with the Manson family.
Right.
It gets you angry. And when you see his movie, it's like this, it subverts that.
Right.
And so it lives up to this odd wish fulfillment that I think is really essential in movies and making them connect to you. It's not just about telling these stories, which I think the new Star Wars movies. I feel like, oh yeah, it's telling it like it's a soap opera of events, but I don't feel like there's this component where I'm seated with any particular character in that way, where I'm like rooting for, like Tom Hanks to be big.
Right.
Because I saw him earlier. He couldn't get the girl. He had a bully kind of hassling him. He couldn't get on the ride because he wasn't the right height. He's frustrated with the idea, and so he wants to be bigger. Those things, they just work, Yeah.
And to hear you say it that way too, you realize it's just a simple element. It's just something. It doesn't have to be a big sort of complex reason to want something or to do something. It could be something as simple as dealing with a bully and your desire to be bigger so you can deal with that. And,
right.
And
That's
now
it.
Now you have a classic movie. Yeah.
Right.
So,
yeah. I wouldn't say it's the only thing, but I think it's one of the things I'm often connecting to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Sorry.
So,
did you like that movie? What did you think of the
Big?
Quentin? No, yeah, Big. Cross between Big and Quentin's movie.
Once Upon a Time in Big. Yeah. No, that would be an interesting, actually, mashup film. I think. No, I did, and I think it's exactly like you said, and maybe it's because, as I referenced, even with Jaws, I think I like the way the film is made in that it's, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm older and that's the kind of movie that I grew up with,
right.
That kind of the way it was shot, the way it felt. But again, it's these sort of simple needs. And I think, again, that's why Star Wars worked very well on its own, the very first movie, because it was farm boy wants adventure, finds out he's got some sort of interesting connection, and meets a princess and a rogue pirate and a big furry alien, and they go and they save the galaxy. I mean, it's a basic story. And it's interesting though that Star Wars too has evolved from that to becoming its own sort of its own mythology, its own set of rules. And I think maybe that's one of the things that makes it a challenge for multiple layers of fans, right? So I've used this example before. So before I give you this example, you saw Rise of Skywalker. How did you feel when you walked out of Episode 9?
Well, I didn't walk out of it. I was in my own house when I saw it. It was the only one I didn't see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you could have walked out of your living room and been like,
actually, I thought I thought it was good. The last part in particular, I was really like kind of into Rey. It was the first time I was really into her storyline. I thought that was the most exciting of the movies was that one, especially the last half of the movie.
Yeah.
I don't recall the first half as much as I did the second half, but I thought that was really successful, the last part.
Yeah. So so that's really interesting. And the reason I bring it up is because there's the people who are super invested, people like myself who spend way too much time thinking about Star Wars, took it apart, right? Whereas, and I found, and it's great to hear you say that, because I found that when I went to Last Jedi with what a friend of mine calls normies, right? People like you who are Star Wars fans, but you're not like, you don't have a problem like I do.
Right.
Whereas, where we, you take it apart, but people who came out of Last Jedi, my friends were like, I don't know how I felt about that, and I walked out of it like, that was very interesting a film, and I took it apart mentally, and I thought it was very good once I sort of sat with it. Rise of Skywalker, I walked out of it and I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. And because I was applying all these multiple layers of mythology and the expanded universe that goes along with Star Wars, whereas for my dad, for example, when he saw it, it was like, oh, the Emperor's back. He's a bad guy. I know that bad guy. She beat him. That's great. That was fun.
Right.
And maybe that's why it was maybe a little bit better received than Last Jedi, because Last Jedi kind of leaves you in a very strange, almost dark and personal place. Did you enjoy Last Jedi?
No. No, I didn't like that one. I know there was some people, it was strange because I had never seen a Star Wars movie have more good reviews than that one.
Yeah.
That was the best reviewed from critics, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the top review, but of course it was beat to hell by a lot of fans who didn't care for it. So it's and again that
and it's funny to see Mark Hamill on interviews about that movie because he seems so put off by a lot of the character alterations. His character.
Yeah, he tries to walk that line as spokesperson and keep his kind of personal feelings out of it to a degree.
Yeah, he's funny. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So no, I think that's interesting because again, to the point you're making, it's can the movie kind of work on its own, or do you need that sort of, it's a conversation that I think happens in a lot of films. Is, if I don't read the book, is that okay? Can I get enough out of the movie?
Yeah.
Right? So.
I know. I think it's, I know. I'm trying to think of the Pixar movies. They all seem quite self-contained, even when they do a sequel. I think the Toy Story 4, they did a pretty good job, even though I was around there when they were having tons of trouble making that movie.
Mm-hmm.
You always wondered, why do they have to make a fourth one? Didn't they wrap this up? Why do they do, while this is going on for years, you're wondering this. And then somehow they always seem to pull it out. They always make something work.
Right.
But I think they're always thinking of that. In that case, that one wasn't so much. It wasn't relying so much on things you had to understand before you could pretty much gather, which is not easy to do the way they do it. Do you think part of that has to do with the fact that if you're revisiting a franchise so many years later, you have to make some assumptions that not everybody knows what happened in the previous film. Yeah. I know those movies. Yeah, they each had a 10-year gap.
Yeah.
Like a 9 or 10-year gap between sequels.
Right. Movies.
How they make their sequels.
Yeah, movies that are aimed at children that have grown up when they're on to the next one. That's pretty funny. So I mentioned this to you before we got on, and I was going to see if you're up to it. If Kathleen Kennedy was coming up with her next Star Wars film, and she didn't know where to go, so she has coffee with Brad Bird, and Brad says, "You know who I would call? I would call Teddy Newton." And Kathleen gets you on the phone and says, "Teddy, I need a Star Wars movie.
Yeah,
no holds barred. What do you got?"
I could think of a scene for some reason, like maybe the opening, how it might go, and I keep thinking of the normal Star Wars opening is with the big music and the title card going in space. But if that's what you had expected, it'd be fun to like subvert that. And maybe the movie just starts off with like a cold opening where it's just like Luke and Ben just driving a land speeder in close up. Very much like the Goodfellas opening, where they're driving, and then they hear bumps, like for some reason, and he's like, "What the fuck is that?" That would be the first line, and then they'd be, "You think you better pull it over? You better pull it over," and then they pull it over, and then they open the trunk, and it's C-3PO in 100 parts, all entangled in his wires, and then they just start chopping him up with a lightsaber. And he says, "As far back as I could remember, I always wanted to be a Jedi Knight." And then they'd freeze frame and come into, Luke's face. Maybe that as an opening, because I think if your audience did grow up, like they were kids when they saw it, maybe that's what they would want to see as adults now.
It's a bit different. I like it. It's I don't know where it goes from there, but it sounds great. So it's like
it's all narrated too. It's all narrated by Luke in that Ray Liotta style.
Now, is it whiny Luke, or is it like sort of rough and tumble Luke?
Yeah, it'd have to be rough and tumble Luke. He's
I would think. Yeah. Now, would you do it? Would you do it as animated? Or would you do live action and just?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Live action. Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
we can even do one now. I don't know. It's funny. All the live action, everything live action's closed now, it seems, out here.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you guys dealing with
Coronavirus.
Yeah.
Well, it hasn't really hurt animation too much.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these animation projects you could kind of do from your home.
Right. Do you think there's an opportunity for, or do you think we'll see sort of a surge of animated or digital, all digital films or all animated films? Do you think we'll see sort of a bolus of that as a result of this 3 to 6 months?
I do. I think I've even heard a lot of actors wanting to get involved in animation suddenly that you wouldn't think would be wanting to get in on it, you know.
Right. I can get a paycheck. All I need is a blanket, a microphone, and a closet, and I can. That's fine.
Yeah. You were. I know when we were on the phone, you had asked me about Iron Giant.
Oh yeah. Why don't we?
Any relationship to Star Wars? And then I said, well, you know what? Was Joe Johnston designed the Iron Giant?
That's right. Cool.
And I remember him popping in my office one day. That was about the closest I got to him, but he just came in to say hi one day, and he just did. In a few weeks, there it was. He did a great design for it.
That's cool. And so he did the actual design of
he did the drawings of the original one. Yeah, and then I think Mark Whiting, the production designer, refined it.
I've always wondered. Now that was directly related to the Pete Townsend story. Is that right? Or what came first?
Yeah, I think there was a book, and then there was a play that had a lot of music in it. And when they were going to make this movie, Brad wanted to do something else, and so he had to have a conversation with Pete Townsend that they were not going to do the musical version; they were going to do this other thing.
And how did Pete Townsend handle it?
I don't know, but I remember being when I was younger then I always liked playing practical jokes while Brad was in the office with Pete Townsend.
Right.
I drew this picture of Pete Townsend and hung it on the door.
Right.
That they were in that room, and his nose looked so big. It was like a state, you know what I mean? It was like so big. And so the second Brad opened that door and he saw that thing, he just tore it right down. He didn't want anybody to see that drawing.
Now you've said that like Brad has like felt like you were just trying to get fired at every opportunity. Yeah. Was that one of those moments?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's what I was trying to do. I think I was just naturally inclined to like have fun in a way that I think it was just like an animator would. I don't know. It's changed a lot, I guess. Honestly, even Pixar. I mean, that was so fun. I mean, it was kind of like the Wolf of Wall Street over there for years.
Right.
Now it's very stodgy. I'm not saying they would make a bad film, but it's just that it's just a different vibe than it used to be.
Do you have any? You've told me so many fun stories about when you were trying to get out of Disney. I don't know if you want to share any of those, but my God, I remember you and me and Chris just sitting at a table, and I was rolling my eyes, just laughing my butt off with some of those stories. But like,
yeah, well, I don't know what, I mean, I you know what it is? I think when you're younger, you want an outlet for something, some kind of self-expression. And I really did think right after school I would get that. And going into Disney, it was absolutely the opposite of that. I almost felt like I would create these little ideas that would just wilt in the wastebasket over there. It was becoming so sequestered out of that building and into other buildings that really didn't even have art going on in them. That's how like disconnected I was from everybody there.
Right.
And that was really a sad time for me. And so one time I remember they pulled me in and they said, listen, we're gonna move you to an hourly rate. And I'm hearing the story, and you can have your keys to the office, you got your desk, you got everything, but we'll call you when we need you. Was kind of the idea. You could even be at home by your pool. I mean, was that was the idea?
Yeah.
And it almost was presented as if it was appetizing.
Right.
And I remember walking out of the office, and a friend of mine says, "Hey, look, that guy sounds like he just fired you."
Yeah.
And I said, "No, he didn't fire. He said I could have the keys to the building and the whole, and so I thought I better find a producer to work with then." So I'm looking around, and I actually got hooked up with one. They put me on a movie, but within a few hours, that producer came back to me and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we got an outside developer for this one," which made me understand there was a discussion about putting me on the movie. They did not want me on the movie, but they would never say you're fired.
Right.
And so I thought, well, I've got to make money somehow. So I came into the office dressed in a tuxedo, and I had a little kit that I worked in the bathroom, the men's room, that was like, combs and mouthwash and stuff. And I had all kinds of people come in at lunch, and I'd give them mints and such. And eventually that executive came in who fired me. And he did not even want to look at me. He went right to the second stall, the one in the middle.
Right.
And he's farting real loud. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And so this guy, it was so arrogant, and he comes over to me, and I'm watching him wash his hands, and I'm gauging how many towels he might need. So I'm going to get the towels ready. And I said, "Would you like a mint? Maybe even a back rub?" And he didn't say anything to me. He just brushed past me. And then next thing you know, there's another executive coming in, and he's laughing a little. He's like kind of nervous, laughing, thinking, "What are you doing? What is this?" And I said, "Well, I'm working for tips." And he says, "But why?" And I was explaining, well, I heard I couldn't get on anything right now, so I needed some money in the meantime, but I'm here, and so he said, "You better pack this stuff up because we got a lot of important people here."
Right.
So I stayed around for a little bit. I made about $3. And then soon enough, they had a PA come in, and they escorted me out of the building. And they said, "Listen, Teddy, they just want you out of here. They don't want you here." And I was realizing why they didn't do it. They didn't want to actually say you're fired, because then they'd have to pay some kind of unemployment. They wanted me to say I quit.
Right.
And so instead I turned it around to forcing them to say that, ultimately. I'm not saying this is what anyone should do, because I did it. And I was only like 21 years old. So you could kind of get away with it a little more. And if I maybe did it today, but.
And so from there you went to, did you go straight to Pixar?
I met with Brad Bird after that. Yeah. It was soon with him.
Did you have to offer him
he was great
or?
Because he was so different. He was so open to different kinds of things. And I think it's because he had a very long bout after his Disney experiences to, he had other kinds of movies in mind besides princess movies.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why he connected with me really, and I connected to him.
That's good. And are you still doing work with him on a regular basis, or?
I'm doing something right now with him.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's got a new animated movie coming.
Can you play with me?
I'll play with you in a minute. 1 minute. We got to get through these 10 questions. Okay.
0 minutes.
Go inside for a minute, and then I'll be right with you, because we're gonna do. Unless you want to see. Do you want to see me do 10 questions?
1, 2, 3, 4.
All right.
All right. Let's get to that first question. You're on the clock here. What is your favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book?
I think the New Hope.
Yeah.
That's my favorite one. It goes sometimes back and forth between number 2, but number 5, but I think that's the one. Just for its sheer audacity to even have gotten made,
Yeah, and like we said, it lives on its own. It can exist on its own. What's your least favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book?
Maybe what is this thing? Oh, okay. Oh, great. Thank you. That's for baseball. Yeah. That we didn't get to do baseball season.
Right. Yeah. My son missed his baseball and soccer season. Yep.
Let's see. I'm going to have to say the Last Jedi.
Yeah. All right. It's cool. Would you consider yourself an Imperial or a rebel?
Yeah, a rebel. Yeah.
What's your favorite Star Wars sound effect?
Oh, Kitty, come here. He's asking what our favorite Star Wars sound effect is. Remember we had that book?
Yeah.
We have a book where you could play all the different sounds from the movie.
Cool.
And I think it's Greedo. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, all the voices. Yeah. There's Greedo.
So, all
I'll
right.
do that impression because I know you've asked me.
I was going to say that.
I'm going to do it as Dick Cavett would do. If Cavett were cast as Greedo, he would do this. He'd go, Uta puta solo, sambichale dara wisami, jaba waninchi koda wisami dai sami iwawaska. So, maybe if they cast Dick.
Yeah, they had their chance, and they chose some other person, but that would. That's great. I love that because as I've told you before, and I've actually told the story a number of times that I think that was one of the first things you did when we first met, and I was like, this guy knows the whole. It inspired me to learn it.
Yeah.
Well. So of course I don't do it.
I think I knew it so well because they didn't have when I was younger. You had to wait till they re-released those in theaters, and
right.
I remember having recorded the thing with a little cassette player and just having listened to the movie. Oh yeah, come here. Yeah, here we go. You got it. Isn't that great? Yeah, you've seen this book?
Yes, that's an awesome book.
You found it perfectly. Yeah, that's great. There's like 2,000. No, how many are there? There's like, all right.
I think I like it as Dick Cavett a little bit better.
Yeah.
All right. Who's your favorite droid? R2-D2, C-3PO, or BB-8?
Oh. I think R2-D2, just because he's a little more feisty,
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Yeah, that's not the book anymore. That's some big tragedies happening out here.
Just down the road, just a little. As long as it's not happening at your house, because
Right.
yeah. All right. What spaceship or vehicle from the Star Wars universe would you most like to own?
Vehicle. I know. Even though it's kind of junky, I would love Luke's land speeder.
Why? What about the land speeder do you like? Is it that brown 70s color?
I think I would know how to drive it for one. I think that wouldn't take too difficult a permit.
Plus, it's a great place to start your Star Wars pitch.
Ben showed that original shit. All right. That's too much. It's too loud. That thing was chopped up. The land speeder. After filming, I guess it was.
Was it really?
Big a hassle to bring it back, so they just chopped it up and burned it. The original one. It's a replica over at the Peterson Museum here in Hollywood, though.
Oh, cool! Very cool. All right, Porg, Ewok, or Jar Jar Binks? Who's your favorite?
Oh, Ewok.
Ewok. Yeah.
Am I too predictable on these? Yeah.
No, you're doing just fine. You're doing just fine.
Although those pork guys were pretty good. I'd say that was kind of funny.
Yes. Yeah, they were.
I did kind of enjoy that. Yeah.
It was a cool little thing there. If
I'm
you
actually on an actual radio show when she's putting on she's like the sound guy. Putting on the little,
she's in the back. She's got the headphones on. She's like,
looking.
We need a door slam. You got a door slam in there?
Yeah.
All right. If you could be any character in Star Wars, who would it be and why?
Oh, there he is, Han Solo. You play him again? Yeah.
Bulky religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster.
That guy.
There you go. Yeah. And why Han Solo?
What, Pete?
Why Han Solo? Why do you pick him?
Oh, I don't know. He's just so cool. He's relaxed. He just goes in. He kills people. He's just like having fun.
That's awesome. All right. Question number 9. I know the answer to this one, but what's your favorite trilogy? The originals, prequels, or sequels? I think we beat that one up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the original George Lucas. Although he was involved in most of the others too. But
up until he made $4 billion handing them off to Disney and saying, "Good luck, have fun with it." The last question is, what is your favorite Star Wars quote?
Wait, hold on. I want to think of the favorite quote. Wait, hold on. Is that a quote? This one? No. No, who is that? Let me see. I'd like. Hold on, settle down a little bit. Yeah, it's just too much screaming. I like. Sorry about the mess. I like that. I like that quote.
It's a good quote.
Yeah,
I like that one too. That's a very good one.
This is a funny attitude to have after murdering someone in a public place. It's like your problem now, guy. You know,
here's a coin.
Here's 6 cents to take care of that mess. Sorry.
Kind of sums Solo up in a nutshell.
Yeah.
That's speaking of great scenes, like there's so many great subtle things that you get to know everything you need to know about Han Solo in that moment. One of my favorite parts is when Obi-Wan Kenobi says, myself, the boy, 2 droids, and no questions asked. And the very next line is, what is it, some kind of local trouble? It's a question. He starts immediately with a question. And I feel like that gives you all you need to know about who this guy is. So,
great.
Great. Speaking of great, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. This was a lot of fun. This was cool catching up and talking a bit of Star Wars and other movies and process and that sort of thing. So, do you have a website or anything you want to pitch or?
I have an Instagram page. It's just look up Teddy Newton.
You'll find it. Awesome.
Yeah.
that was
it's
a hard
mostly
sell.
Drawings of these two, of my 2 kids.
That's awesome. And somewhere in my house, I have.
He dressed up as Luke from Return of the Jedi this year. It was such a spot-on costume.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's one picture of him, and I drew a little picture of him with his lightsaber. And his lightsaber's on while it's hanging on his belt, and it's burning through the floor. So it's going wherever he's going.
That's funny. Somewhere in my house, I have. I think we might have told the story before, where I in fact, this all comes back to the Revenge of the Sith night, because here's the full story if I remember it correctly. I hadn't seen you for a while, and I had lost like 65 pounds, right, between the 2 times I had seen you.
Right.
And you were going to meet me and Chris and a couple other people at this bar beforehand. And Chris tells me, he's like, okay, when Teddy comes, he's not going to recognize you because you lost so much weight. You gotta, when you see Teddy, you gotta come up to him and tell him you're a big fan. And you're such a nice
like a
guy.
random guy in the bar.
Random guy in the bar. And I walk up to you. We see you coming in. I go off to the side. I wait 5 minutes. I come over and I'm like, I'm sorry, I hate to do this. Are you Teddy Newton? And you were so polite. You're like, yes, I am. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a big fan. I love what you did with Toy Story, and I love what you did with Incredibles. Can I have your autograph? And you drew a quick sketch of Jack, and you signed it, and you made it out to me. And then I felt really bad because I was like, Teddy, it's me, it's Pete. But,
I know. No, that's funny. My mom hates those kind of practical jokes at my expense, but I thought it was pretty funny.
Well, I don't want to let your mom down, so we just don't give her the link to this show.
Yeah,
so she won't feel bad, but awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you so much. I'll talk to you again soon.
All right.
See ya.
All right, Pete. Have a
Bye.
good day.
Bye.
For over 40 years, Star Wars has been a part of our culture, a part of our lives, and a part of who we are. Now there's one place with something for every type of Star Wars fan: the Beyond the Blast Doors Network. From the latest in Star Wars news,
A great day, an exciting day here on the YouTube channel.
to collectibles,
Oh, I'm jealous.
Yeah, what do you?
Beautiful.
How much you want for it?
interviews with creators,
If you want your book to feel necessary, it has to deliver some insight or some piece of information that you didn't get anywhere else.
famous fans,
Yeah, and it's like all the there's a yeah. That's great.
fan documentaries,
This moment, like the Force awakened in Rey, but it also awakened something in me.
and great conversation with casual and hardcore fans alike.
You know, I've seen a lot of things end up on the cutting room floor that I'm like, oh.
The Beyond the Blast Doors Network was made for you. New content nearly every day of the week on video and podcast. There's something for every fan. Visit BeyondTheBlastDoors.com and on YouTube search Beyond the Blast Doors.